The cold rain beat down on the village road as Amir, a poor mechanic, knelt beside a broken truck. His hands were covered in grease, his clothes soaked, and his body ached from a long day's work. He fixed vehicles for pennies, but every rupee he earned went to keep his family's house standing, paying the mortgage his mother could no longer afford. That night, Amir trudged home, carrying a small bag of groceries. His shoes were muddy, his face tired, but there was a flicker of hope in his heart. Christmas was coming. Maybe, for once, his family would welcome him with warmth. When he reached the house, he saw it glowing with lanterns and decorated with garlands. Inside, his mother and relatives sat around a Christmas tree, laughing and eating together. Amir paused at the doorway, dripping rainwater onto the floor, waiting for someone to notice him. Finally, his mother turned. Her eyes, instead of softening, turned cold. She frowned and said the words that would burn in his memory forever. "You're not welcome here for Christmas." The room fell silent. Amir's chest tightened. He had fixed their roof, paid their debts, and kept this house standing, yet at the moment he needed love the most, they cast him aside. Without a word, he stepped back into the night. Rain poured harder, but it didn't matter. His heart was heavier than the storm. That night, sitting alone in his small rented room, Amir opened the mortgage papers he had been faithfully paying for years. His hands trembled, not with weakness, but with a new strength. He tore the papers in half. If he wasn't welcome in the home he paid for, then let them face the weight of their own choices. From that day, Amir stopped paying the mortgage. The house that had rejected him would no longer stand on his sacrifice. For the first time, he felt free. Amir finally reached home, clothes soaked, water dripping from his tired frame. The small, dimly lit house smelled of damp wood and smoke from the old stove. His wife sat at the table, eyes swollen with tears. Beside her, an older man, his uncle, raised his voice in anger, accusing Amir of being a burden. Amir's mother stood nearby, hands shaking, torn between her son and the bitter words being thrown across the room. In the corner, Amir's little child sat silently, watching everything, eyes wide with fear and confusion. Amir stood at the doorway, exhausted, carrying nothing but sacrifice, and felt the weight of the whole world pressing on him. That night, as the storm outside calmed into a cold drizzle, a sharp knock echoed through the wooden door. Everyone turned, startled. When Amir opened it, a well-dressed stranger stood there, raincoat glistening under the lantern light. The stranger introduced himself politely, holding a leather folder in his hands. The family exchanged uneasy glances. Amir's wife gasped in surprise, while his uncle scowled with suspicion. Amir's mother froze, fear creeping into her eyes. Amir felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He sensed this visit carried weight, something far beyond a casual call. His tired hands clenched. The mechanic, who had given everything, now feared what truth this stranger was about to deliver. The air inside the poor living room grew tense. The angry uncle slammed his fist on the table, shouting at Amir's wife, his voice echoing through the cracked walls. In the corner, a glass fell to the ground, shattering into tiny pieces, the sound of a family breaking apart. The well-dressed stranger leaned close to Amir's wife, whispering words no one else could hear. Her eyes widened in fear and shame, while the mother clutched the little child tightly, trying to shield them from the chaos. Outside, under the dripping eaves, Amir sat alone on a wooden stool. A cigarette burned slowly between his fingers. He stared into the darkness, the smoke curling in the cold air, his face hardened by pain and silence. He was a man carrying storms inside and out, yet no one in that room saw the weight of his sacrifice. The next morning, the family stood in a crowded courtroom. The air was heavy with whispers and judgment. At the front, the stern-faced judge sat high on the bench, his gavel resting silently in his hand. Amir's wife sat beside a lawyer, her face streaked with tears. The uncle, who had once shouted with so much power, now sat restless, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead. The well-dressed stranger took the stand, his voice clear and sharp as he delivered his testimony. At the very back of the room, Amir sat quietly, hands folded, his face unreadable. He said nothing, but his silence was louder than any words. For years, he had carried their burdens, paid their debts, and fought their battles. But now, he had let go. As the judge's voice rang out across the courtroom, Amir stood, turned, and walked out the doors. He didn't need their approval anymore. And he didn't owe them another coin. That night, the city streets glowed with neon lights, reflecting off the wet pavement. The chaos of the courtroom had followed them outside, but now the truth was about to break free. Amir's wife stood tall beneath a flickering street lamp, her tears gone, replaced by a new fire in her eyes. For the first time, she confronted her husband openly, her voice steady and fearless. Beside her, the well-dressed stranger held a stack of secret documents, the evidence that could tear apart every lie. The husband's face turned pale as he realized the walls were closing in. His arrogance had vanished, replaced with trembling fear. In the shadows, Amir watched silently. His figure blended into the dark alley, cigarette glowing faintly. He didn't need to step forward, the truth was unraveling on its own. The man who had been mocked, used, and cast aside was now the quiet witness to their downfall. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with tension. Suddenly, the judge raised his gavel high and slammed it down with a sharp crack that echoed through the hall. "Guilty," the judge declared, his voice firm and final. Gasps filled the room. The corrupt husband's face went pale as guards stepped forward, their hands gripping his arms. He struggled for words, but it was too late, his lies had finally collapsed. At the front, Amir's wife stood tall, her tears flowing not from sorrow but from victory. The well-dressed stranger placed the last piece of evidence on the bench, his role complete. At the back of the room, Amir rose slowly. His weary face softened as he bent down to hug his child, pulling them close with a sigh of deep relief. For the first time in years, the burden on his shoulders felt lighter. The guards led the defeated husband away, his eyes full of shock and fear. Justice had spoken, and Amir no longer stood alone in silence. He had found freedom, dignity, and the quiet triumph of truth.